Hi, how are you today? I am here today to talk about the planning of your week. So, last episode or last YouTube video, I had talked a lot about setting your goals, kind of figuring out your priorities, and breaking them down into steps. But now we're kind of going to get a little bit more granular. We're going to take those little pieces of information that we had talked about last week on the Airtable template that you can actually purchase down below. It's really inexpensive. I just want to make it a thing that people actually use. But this week, we're going to take it a step further and kind of look at those pieces and figure out how to plan for your week. So as we're getting into 2023 and we really want to make sure we reach these goals, whether they be personal or business goals or entrepreneurial goals, how we do that and how we can use technology like ClickUp and Airtable to help assist us on those, again, whether they are personal goals or professional goals. If you haven't heard of me before, I am Anna of Anna Simple Solutions. I work with overwhelmed, neuro-divergent CEOs and their teams to help organize and systemize everything that they do so they can really spend their time on the things that they love and moving their business forward and their lives forward and spending time with the people that they love. So without further ado, I kind of want to tell you a little story. So I have two children, two little boys. One I shouldn't say is so little. He is 10 years old. And I also have a 6-year-old who happens to be in the other room today. He is home for the Martin Luther King Day celebrations. And every morning, it's somewhat of a chore to get them out of bed. They whine. They're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get dressed today. I don't want to do that. And we all know that feeling. Believe me, when I get up in the morning, I have that feeling as well. But one of the things that I ask them when we do that is how can we make this an easier thing for you? How can we make it so it's easier that you get up? And so we sit there and we kind of brainstorm. Sometimes I'll snuggle with them in bed. Sometimes I'll throw a football back and forth with my 10-year-old. And I'll be like, okay, what are things that we can do? Well, we can set up, we can make sure our clothes are set out the night before. We can make sure we've already planned what we're having for breakfast, make sure that everything's in our backpack ready to go. And I kind of explain to them, this is the planning part. This is the part where you're making everything easier for yourself so you can spend the time doing the things that you want to do because you're planning everything else. And I wanted to bring up the story to talk about planning your week because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has in the past just felt like I'm just reacting to everything going on. And I still have days like that. But what the thing that I really do is that I take an hour on Sundays, or even Monday mornings sometimes. I try to do it on Sundays because I work better at that, and really look at my goals that I've made for this quarter or this part of the year and look at my calendar, and I do something a little bit like time blocking. Of course, time blocking you have to learn how it works for you. Some people do better with every single minute to spare. I do better with having categories of work. Like I'm working for this client doing certain things at this time. I'm working on myself at this time because the way that my neurodivergent brain works is that being able to focus on something for 2 to 3 hours, even if I'm doing some different things, is a much more efficient way to get things done than having to switch back and forth every half hour or what have you. So what we're going to do today is kind of talk through how to figure out what your calendar looks like for that week. So I am going to give you, let me see how many steps, 6 steps to follow. I just thought through them, so I wanted to check them out. 6 steps to follow to make sure that you are planning your week appropriately, regardless of how detailed you want your time blocking to be. And then I'm going to show you an example of how to do this, at least in a more broader sense within the Airtable tool. And I believe I will actually create one in ClickUp as well because there is a better way to kind of organize estimated time in there. So, but I'm going to start with Airtable first. So the first thing to do is look at your calendar, whether it's paper calendar or digital calendar, and make sure everything that is in your brain is an important thing is scheduled first. And when I say that, it's not necessarily business meetings. It could be, but it could be make sure you phone your mom once every week. Look at your goals, your personal goals list. What are the things that you want to do to make sure that happens, and things that you've already started the habit of doing? Make sure those are on your calendar. I want to be in bed by 9 o'clock and asleep by 9:30 every night. So I actually have that in my calendar. I have putting my kids to bed in my calendar. I have my the night that I'm in charge of taking my older son to Taekwondo in my calendar. So all of those things, those should be in first, because those are the things that actually make your life fulfilled at the end of the day. Business is part of it, yes, but family, personal goals and things like that is as well. And if you're single, then you can put things in like visiting friends or family that you choose, or walking your dog, things like that. After you get those really important events, then put the other events that need to happen, maybe aren't as important as those important events, or maybe need to move. I'm talking stuff like if you need a haircut or something, you can move that to next week if you don't have time this week, or you thought you were going to do it the time that someone had a game or something like that. And so you can make sure that they're still getting done. So you're actually looking at them, but you're moving them to another slot. Then make sure you schedule at least a little bit of personal time. And when I say personal time, it could just be sitting on the couch watching Netflix, if that's what you choose. I have personal time scheduled every morning where I take my dog, my puppy, for a walk, and we walk for 2.5 miles. And am combining. I like to be efficient, but also effective. I like to combine his exercise with my exercise. That's when I listen to my podcasts, or sometimes I just listen to music, and really kind of get energized for the day. And that is very precious to me. So I schedule that in every morning to do, and I encourage you to do something similar, whatever kind of fills your bucket and brings you joy, whether that's meditation or journaling, what have you. Now we need to focus on everything else. Okay, so now we're talking about your business and your work and those types of things. I like to put in, so there's this talk about doing the big rocks. If you've read EOS or things like that, big rocks are those big important projects that need to get done for the week. Those are really important, but I actually like to schedule in buffer time for big meetings of the week before I even do those big rocks, because that buffer time is when administrative stuff from the previous activity can get done going into the next. And it's a little bit of breathing room. You don't want to be slammed to the next meeting because then you're going to be scrambling, trying to do one or two things. And I say that having have a meeting starting in 10 minutes from now as I'm recording this. So I don't always follow my rules, but I really try to, because I know I'm going to feel better if I do. And then you can look at your actual projects, your big projects, the things that are going to move you forward fastest, and the priorities that from the list that you've made that come forward. That's when that should be scheduled. We want to look at focus time, where you can work on projects for a longer focused period, especially if it's something you enjoy, something that brings those dopamine hits. And also all the little things that you have to do, maybe schedule at the end of that big chunk that you're doing client work or project work that has to do with it as well. And maybe knock those out one or two at a time, just to make sure that they are getting done and you aren't being overwhelmed by it. So at the end of every day, and this is hard for me because I'm always running up against that line of picking up my kids from school and making dinner and all that other stuff, but I really try to take at least 15 minutes to just make sure that I have everything done, that if there's any tasks that need to be moved to the next day, but we'll talk about daily reviews and things like that later. Just make sure it's in your calendar when you plan your week so you can do that. So last week we had talked about, so we're going over to Airtable now. We had talked about intentions, goals, and then tasks and projects that come from those goals. Now, I have created a slightly different, more advanced Airtable base going through this, and I'm still kind of developing it, but I thought that it would be really good to kind of show how this can be used without having to go into another tool or something like that, or as a way to refer to when you're writing down for the week when you're going to do things. So right here we have the tasks and projects, which is something we talked about last week about how to actually break out your goals into tasks and projects, and looking at the status, etc. I actually created this grid view by related goal. So if you actually go into group by field, you can see that they're all grouped together by related goal. So we can kind of see what it's all broken up as, and when those due dates are. So I have actually added a field here, and this is a formula field that tells us if it's overdue, if it's on time, and certain things that are due soon. And because of that, we are actually able to create, and I really like this view because it really kind of gives me a different, it works with the way my brain works, to see each thing and help create the priorities for them. Something I left out is they also created a priority field. So when you are looking at these, you can actually change the priorities based on several factors, based on due date of the project, based on just importance. I guess this has become really important because I'm having health issues or what have you. So those really things, whether when it's overdue, the priority of it really should help distinguish when you should do these during the week. I also have here due date of task, so you can actually look at it this way as well and change the due date here. But one of the things that I actually really prefer looking at when I look at the week is the calendar and the task due dates. So here we have the calendar view, and I'm actually in a paid version of Airtable right now, which is why it has colors, but and it has a start date and due date, and you actually can look at these. You don't need to have the colors, and it still works just as well, and you can still have these on here. So what you can do is actually, on the calendar view, right now we're on the month view, which I like, but the week view actually works, I think, really well when you're trying to figure out what the priorities are and when they can be there. So I'm going to see the tasks. These are unscheduled tasks. And we can, so if we don't know when they're due, that's fine. But we can go in here and make due dates for them when we need them. So this particular one is related to my go to singing lessons every week. It's probably, and we're going to change it to in progress, and it doesn't have a due date yet. So I am actually going to take this and make it due on Thursday. Let's say I have a lot more availability Thursday. You are also able to actually pull in calendars, like your personal calendar, into Airtable as well, which could make this easier. But I like the fact that you can kind of stack these together. So this is one way you can do it. I also, and I'm going to show you real quick, how I do it on my Google Calendar. Everything in gray is my ideal calendar, and we haven't talked about this, but I have a way of actually looking at my ideal calendar, and that's kind of a way that I figure out how I'm going to do certain tasks within it and add them in there. So what you're seeing here, some things are overlapping, and which means I'm going to have to make sure that I change them. But you can, what's great about this is you can just drag and drop. See, we have a buffer block here to get in there and change it to a different time, and I'm just going to move that back, and that drag and drop is actually quite easy. So that's a little bit of what I do to plan my week every week to make sure that I have kind of a standard plan. I am aware of all of the goals that I'm going for when we are trying to do them and how to get them in a way that we can make sure that we're doing that on time and we're actually getting towards our goal. So that was a lot of information. I just want to reiterate, you can play with and kind of more deep dive into these templates. I have a link to just the other template below once the planner one becomes available. I do have some kinks to work out in it. That's going to be, we'll add that into the comments here. But I'd love to know if you have specific questions about how to plan this stuff or how to utilize Airtable and ClickUp in general. And yeah, this is all for this week. I've got to jump on another call, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Again, this is Anna of Anna's Simple Solutions, and until next time, keep it simple.